Bienvenido a Mambo Podcast. Si te gusta la vaina, suscríbete a la vaina, dale like a la vaina y comparte la vaina.
What kind of fool would sacrifice for someone else? Give everything in the name of love. So yeah, recently I've been, like I was telling you, I've been busy working on some of the independent production stuff, just like working with independent artists, people that are either songwriters or starting out as singers and stuff like that, and I do production for them. It helps pay the bills. Doing that, and also busy working on Break Out the Crazy, which is my project with my wife. You know, we up until now, everything we've released has been in English, mostly. Like, I think we did one Spanish song and then another Spanish song that was not really written by us, but it was for a movie. And then other than that, everything's been in English. So now we finally are like trying to focus in the Spanish market a little bit with this new project, with this new EP. And so we're super excited. We're shooting the video to the first single next week. And that's already finished. We have another song that's already mixed. We're waiting for 2 more songs to be mixed. Hopefully next week we'll get those. And yeah, that's pretty much has been the main focus. That and just trying to, stay warm and stay alive in this cold.
That's right, New York living.
Bro, New York living in 2022 in America, it's like right now everything is just really uncertain.
Yeah, there's a feel in the air that once you walk outside of your door, and things might look familiar, but there's so much brand newness. I'm not sure if that sounds like something that you might relate to. It's just, even places you've been to before, it's like kind of have to take a different approach at it, a little more open, but at the same time, like, I don't know, these people tend to, like, they change their New York feel.
Yeah, I mean, New York is New York, and it's a special place. We've been talking a lot to people from other places, since we're doing these shows, these So Far Sounds shows. I was starting to tell you about that, we've been doing these pop-up concerts recently, and So Far is amazing for that, because what they do is that they have it set up all over the world, and they have a like a team here in New York. They have them in LA and all the main cities, and they'll just get a bunch of different indie artists together, a group of them, like 3 a night. Lately it's been 3 a night, and they'll do it in a place, maybe a little theater, a little cafe, like it's all in different places. And they have them in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, the Bronx, all over. And the people don't know who they're gonna go see. They just go, they know that So Far provides this kind of entertainment, so they go and they buy their tickets. And when they get there, they're surprised with 3 completely new artists that they never heard before, never seen. And it's great. You perform for a new audience every time, and they're captive. They're completely silent. They're just there to hear you singing. And it's cool. So you meet a lot of artists from other places, other states, other people that just come here and they just want to put on a show real quick. And anyway, what I was telling you was that that we were talking with some people from like outside, and they love New York, and it's like a dream for many people to come here and be here and be part of this kind of like melting pot with people from all over, people from all different kinds of races and cultures and stuff mixing together. And that's still the general vibe you get. And the fact that there's a lot of public transportation, a lot of walking around. So you're in the street a lot more. There's no other really no other place like it. I've been in other countries and stuff, and you kind of don't get that same feeling anywhere else. So that's true. But the pandemic, bro, hit everything super hard and changed everything.
Yeah.
And we can't deny it. As much as we want to kind of be like, okay, yeah, things are back, like they've never been the same since that happened, I think.
Definitely. I feel like New Yorkers at this point have refined so much to where 1 or 2 trips to go outside turns into 1 trip for like the next few days. It's by nature, by default.
Yeah. No, things are a little bit crazy right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I do want to ask you something that I'm very curious about. I was checking out one of your videos with your wife, and that process of making the song and kind of well, specifically, I think it was for you a song named Eulogy, and there was a portion which you had a format for the chorus, and then when she was saying it back to you, it was kind of different, but you kind of just accepted it because you just want the vibe to work with the nature of the song. I think that is so cool because it's a very difficult thing in general for artists to just let themselves go in a collaboration that way and trust that the person that's with you respects the process and the feel of the song.
Totally. Yeah, man. I mean, you know what it is that when you're creative, you can, and I think that doing it for a lot of years, you kind of are able to fine tune that and hone in on that. And it's this like basically the gauge of how far you can take things, like how much you could stick your fingers in it, you know? And like, I've learned with years that a lot of times I was overdoing it. Like I was just overdoing a lot of stuff that I was doing because I thought, okay, so this is the way it's done, or this is how I saw so-and-so do it. So it has to be done in this way. And every time I do it, I have to come and I have to manipulate this thing, you know? But it's kind of like clay in a way where like you touch it a little bit and right away you start seeing how it's impacted by that thing that you do. So you got to be careful. So sometimes I realize like I'm working with artists and each artist has a voice, a thing, a characteristic, you know, an innateness that's theirs.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. And it's really what makes us special from one another. You know what I mean? Like if you think about it, we're all using pretty much the same tools. We're all pretty much now kind of, music is kind of transforming into just one thing, you know, like everything has a little bit of everything. So what else can you do to make it original? It's let you say it how you want to say it, and I'll say how I want to say it. And, you know, there's definitely like a tug, a little bit of a push and pull that happens when you're working together. But me and Katia have been working for some years now. We started writing songs since like 2015, 2016.
Wow.
So it's been some years now already. So we're kind of gotten into a rhythm. So I realized that at first I used to push her a lot. And I used to be like, no, say it like this. Sing it right here. No, this is the melody. And I sing it the way I sang it. And I realized that was just stressing us out a lot. It was making us really stressed out and really like, oh my God, making the process a lot heavier. So I realized, oh, you know what? If I can let her have this one, let her have this one. I'll push on something else that I know that I really, really, really want to.
Where you gonna be at? Say you're tripping and I can see that. Maybe we should go back. Pause, rewind. We're falling through an hourglass. Time is testing, will we fail to pass? Since I met you, foot's been on the gas. Pause, rewind.
Want to tweak and I feel like it works. But thank you, by the way, for checking that out, because I thought I thought that'd be cool. And we talked about it. We were like, man, what would people think if we just live stream an entire songwriting session, like seeing a song be born from zero to a whole song. And we did it, you know, and I had to edit it down, of course, because I think it was a few hours on Twitch, and it ended up being like a 30-something minute video or 40-something minute. And not many people watched it.
Well, one thing that's priceless about that process is that it's easy to watch a tutorial of, okay, now we have this new N1 MIDI that you can do this with Ableton and cross connection and what backwards compatibility. That's cool and all, but the process of the nature, that nature in that moment with the collaboration, because I feel like collaborating, you do, hay que entregarse. It's not like when you're doing it all on your own. You're the one that's just going on the fly with ideas. Oh, this works, cool. And you just mend it as you go along. But when collaborating, when you let the nature of the song come out of it, it's como si, it's really not yourself. You're just letting it flow through you, and you just.
That's crazy, but that we've been talking about that a lot lately. Katia was mentioning that just yesterday, and it's kind of how it's been described through the years by different creatives. They said the same thing, like that that it is kind of what it is happening. There's a feeling, especially when you tap into that zone, you know, that thing they call the zone. It's like, it's there. Like, it's not even you anymore. You're not really super conscious of it. It's kind of just happening. And that's, I think, the space that you want to get to, right? So that it's the most genuine expression.
In fact, for that, what you just said is one of the reasons why I started believing in time traveling. I wouldn't say it in the sense of like scientifically using things, but when you do it with a flow within your mind, with the music, you can travel to any part of the world, anytime and place, and use tools from those sounds in order to complete a present project. Even almost like you're digging into the future of something that's not existent. You're tapping into 2027. It's like, okay, yeah, ya lo tengo aquí.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing. Yeah, time and space definitely ceases to exist when you're creating and you're really into it. Like, I can sit right here for hours, bro, for hours, and I forget that I'm sitting in a chair, you know, and I forget about eating. I'm not hungry. I'm just there, and it's amazing. It's the best feeling in the world, you know. It's better than drugs. It's great, but definitely, you know, I can forget too much about the rest of the world, and you know, either my wife or my son or somebody has to come and just like snap me out of it. But you're right.
Now, there's a groove in the song from Break Out the Crazy, Higher.
Yeah.
That groove is so mellow, nothing out of this world, but it feels like if kind of traveling into the future to get that sound. But then the downbeat is like you step into the 70s. That nice kick, that no hay que durar 3 horas to tune that bass. It was so right, man.
Oh man, thank you, bro. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, for real. Like, it's interesting because we were talking about yesterday again. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just super fresh on last night. We just did a show, and so we were just talking about the same thing. We were talking about how different feelings come into the music that you make. Like, how, you know, you make this. I'm Dominican, my parents are Dominican, you're Dominican too, no?
Yes, sir.
Were you born here or in the Dominican Republic?
Well, I'm what you call a Puerto Rican, because from my mom's side, her grandparents are Puerto Rican. So they were born in the Dominican Republic, and I was born and raised here.
Nice. Oh, so you got a cool mix. So yeah, so like, you know, when you have these kind of mixes, you don't really identify just with one thing, you know, with one, like, I don't know, background or whatever. And it's, you know, right now, everything is hyper racialized. And I personally don't like that. I don't like that everybody's talking about race all the time and making everything about that.
Yeah.
But the reason why I don't like it is because of the fact that I'm from New York. And so, like, I grew up, you know, around people from all over the place and listening to a bunch of different things. So those influences are there. When I make my music, you know, be it music that I make with Latin people or music that I make like with my wife, who's, you know, who likes rock music, likes R&B, likes other kind of stuff, and we put that together, it's cool. And it has, like you said, like different things. Like, some stuff might sound futuristic, but something might kind of just take you back to something super classic. And I think it's one of the benefits. That's why I don't feel completely like I'm just like a Dominican. Like, people will be like, oh yeah, he's a Dominican musician or whatever. It's like, man, I know Dominican musicians. You know, like, I know guys like Yacet Tejada, for example, who's a guitar player who does a ton of like folkloric stuff. And he's super into it. He can tell you all about Dominican folklore, for example, and that whole thing. And that's not my world. You know, it just isn't. I have a strong background in merengue, for example. So my father influenced me a lot with my music and everything I do. But he also influenced me in other ways because he was huge into rock and roll music. So he was big into, like, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Carlos Santana and the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel and all these kind of people. So that kind of stuff will always bleed into the stuff that I do because it's the kind of stuff that I heard growing up. So it's almost like sometimes I don't even know what I'm going for, but when I find it, I'm like, that's it. That's what I want. That's what I want it to sound like, and it stays.
It definitely shows in the lo-fi vibes, which, by the way, I'm loving, because
Cool.
it's real easy to just stick to like the standard lo-fi vibe and cool, I'm listening it to the background and reading a book.
Yeah.
But paying attention to the intricacies of what you're doing. The last one I heard, I believe it's 17. I heard a little bit of samba in there, a little touch of like when you were playing with the tempo and the melody. You were using the melody as if it was part of the instrumentation of the percussion to create that samba sound. But it's so lo-fi, it blends right in like it's something completely new, which is cool. It's necessary.
I have the pedal right here that I use to do the loops. Is this Boss RC 202? That's what I've been using, and it's super dope because it has these effects. So each one of these buttons right here is a different effect that I can blend in, and I could use 4 of them at a time, and then like adjust the amount of it or whatever. And you could do that for these 2 channels, and that's it. You know, so it's very, in a way, like it has some versatility, but it has its limitations. And I think that that's what's dope about it. That if it's forced, like I've been pushing myself to do it more and more, so that I could be like, okay, once I do it, it's there. I can't tweak it. I can't change it. I can't move the timing. I just kind of live with it. But then you get creative in other ways, because then it's like, okay, you know what? Every time I hear this is hitting this beat, and I can't ignore that. Maybe like if I was in my DAW, like in my computer, maybe I would be able to adjust certain things so that it could be more perfect or less percussive or pop out less or whatever. But with this, it's like if it's popping out, it's popping out. So then you just kind of wrap around it and adjust. It's so much fun.
Enjoying the restriction and the freedom and the exposure of the sound. That's what's up. I like that.
Yeah, and also, you know what? Like I've been getting a lot into mixing, just like learning more about EQ and compression and just mixing, bro. Because I used to just make my music and throw it all together, and if it worked, it worked, and then I would just leave it up to the pros to do their mixes. But now that I'm getting into it more and more, I'm understanding things about how like there's you know, that 0 point where when your music is the loudest that it could be, or you know, everything reaches that 0. That's it. There's really not much more anywhere else you can go, especially when you export your music and now it has to, you know, be played somewhere else or whatever. And I realized that there's the way that you combine things to reach that limit is something that you learn with time, that things interact in a certain way that feels pleasing to the ear, you know, and that naturally whatever is louder is going to pop out a little more. And so you start working with dynamics and with volumes, and a pedal like this, again, helps with that kind of stuff because everything is just kind of just mixing together in a kind of crude way. And when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, it doesn't.
Well, in that sense, rolling right off of that topic,
yeah,
stereo or mono, which sound do you prefer?
Oh man, I mean stereo always. I'm of course I want stereo always because it's just that feeling you get when you have something and that is stereo and you're listening to it in mono though, and then you push the button to open it up again. It's just like, oh, that's amazing. So for sure, I would say stereo. But again, this, I'm using it in mono. When I do those things, I use it in mono. Well, lately, I've been doing a little trick when I'm mixing it. Because what I do is I do like a little mix master on them before I put them on the video. Giving you the secret right now. Basically, yeah, because the way it sounds coming out of here is cool, but I got to add a little bit of that kind of like vinyl-y kind of sound so that it could sound a little more crunchy, more lo-fi. So I do that in post, and there sometimes I'll like widen some of the stuff that's in the mid and high frequencies. The low end I always try to keep in mono, so that it just sounds tighter and more weight. But yeah.
At the end of a recording session, if you had a red button that enhances everything all the time, would you always use it?
Oh man, let me tell you something. I realized that there might not be such a thing as like just better. There's just a big, let me correct that. When it comes to making music, when it comes to making artwork on these kind of with technology and with tools, there is no such thing as better. There's only relative, there's only contrast. There's only this versus this. How does this make this sound? How does this sound when I adjust this? And that's how everything works, bro. Like it works like that with visual art, with colors, with light. It works like that with music too. Like we so what I talk a lot, sorry. I guess what I'm getting at is the biggest lesson that I've been learning lately is that the contrast is the dope thing. Is when you can have, for example, a verse that feels really good and it feels really tight and nice, and you're not thinking about what's next or I can't wait for this to be over, but you're in it, you're enjoying your verse, but then your chorus gives you something else that contrasts to that verse, bro. That's when the world opens up, right? Because then your expectations are just like surpassed constantly, and that's, I think that's the beauty and the magic that a lot of the big dogs know and understand. The people that make big productions and big artists and all this kind of stuff, they understand that you can't just throw it all in at once all the time. It has to be kind of timed right and measured just about right, and just sprinkled. And so like that button, if that button existed, I'd probably pop it in my chorus or something, you know what I mean? And then I'll just pop it back out on another part or something like that, just so that it's really like, you really feel the impact of it. Because imagine if it's always on, then you might not even notice it.
True.
It only feels really good when you have the before and after.
Yes, indeed. In fact, a lot of what you just mentioned, I would say there's a touch of efficiency that becomes second nature. If you've done it 1,000 times, it gets to the point that maybe I don't need that tool, and that next tool works a little better for me. So then in that case, I can allow it to accept the contrast.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you use that button all the time, you won't know the difference. But if you have it on hold, on reserve, and temporarily use it for coloring, now you're doing a lot less than post and just feeling the groove.
Yeah, but the impact is greater, which is awesome.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Now, what I'm loving about this conversation is that, I don't know if you heard this before, but no matter how many years go by with music, there's just some things that get ingrained into us because there's a groove, there's a downbeat, and there's a feel. Those things never change. And from what I'm hearing, from when you're dealing with sound, you're not even talking about the instrument yet. Everything that's set up for them, the instruments can shine as they're supposed to. And before I forget, you had mentioned your dad with his rock influence. At first, when I was a kid, when I'd listen to a Gran Manzana song, I'd listen to it for enjoyment. I didn't use it as a tool for education yet. But when I started using it as a tool for education, I noticed that in your dad's arrangements, he put a lot of voicing for his piano, which wasn't very common at the time. But he wasn't using a 4/4 voicing. He was using a voicing that fit the song, tailoring it to a song, which is I feel like sometimes is missing nowadays when it comes to the genre of merengue in itself. But those who actually do dare to do that, those are usually the ones who gain that success.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about Juan Luis Guerra in the last few days. And Juan Luis is special, bro, because he did that. He was able to bring these kind of chord progressions and these things to his music in a way that surpassed everyone else in the time. And to the point where it's like the effect of that is still being felt today, where like you're in the Grammys and, you got the people that are voting and that are looking at it and they're like, oh, Juan Luis Guerra is Juan Luis Guerra. He's getting my vote. I don't even have to even listen to it in reality because it's so freaking, it's coming from him. And, again, the music he made and has made and continues to make, did took certain liberties when it comes to like chord progressions and structures of a song. Not all the songs have the traditional structure, like a mambo, for example, doesn't have to be right away, first the saxophone and then the trumpet and then four here and then four there. Like it could be, instead of a mambo, it's just like a brass section part, you know, with a keyboard thing, and then it goes into something else, you know, or a bridge in music. I love bridges in songs, for example, and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the kind of things that I think are, you know, we're super music, we're kind of music geeks over here. And I think that those of us who are, like, we could really appreciate it a lot. And my father's one of those people. My father, you know, I always tell people, I'm like another version of my dad. I'm following a lot in his footsteps. And I feel like I just took on a lot, imprinted on me a lot of his how do you say, criteria when it comes to art and music. And to him, melody and chords and stuff like that is super important. It's always been super important. And so I carry that with me. And it's cool because, for example, in my new project with my wife, she's a lot more of a lyricist. She's like very focused on lyrics and poetry and telling a story. And she's taught me so much about that side of music. And I appreciate it a lot because I've gotten a lot better at that side of things because of her. But my focus is going to be on the melody always and how I'm doing it and, you know, how it can be original or beautiful. Or I love that stuff.
No, one question that comes to mind is the curiosity of compas and zouk. Have you dug into that at any point?
Oof, man, compa, Haitian compa, and zouk and that stuff. Yeah, I'm not big into it to the point like where like I've studied it. I haven't done that, but it's funny because when we worked with Yacer Tejada, the guy I was talking about earlier, the guitarist, he actually put me onto a couple of compa groups that I didn't know of, and he loves it a lot because guitar, you know, they use a lot of guitar, you know, an electric guitar, and it's beautiful. You know, all those guitar parts with like a lot of movement,
yeah,
the beautiful clean sound that's just like scales and stuff.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And so that stuff I always loved, and my father was big into it. And there's another thing that happens is that my father was part of Wilfrido Vargas' band, and Wilfrido Vargas, you know, it's like you could say Wilfrido Vargas did like a Afro beat kind of merengue, you know what I mean? With a lot of orchestral and jazz kind of influences, but it was really like Afrobeat. Like he was bringing a lot of African type melodies and African type voices and things like that into his music. And my dad was big into it with him. And so they were like obsessed with Haitian music at the time. And all the DR, right? Like DR was just like invaded by like a Haitian flavor in the 80s and 70s and 80s that was insane. And it remains still today, right? Like whenever we do anything, it kind of always has a little bit of that color underneath.
Definitely. In fact, because of it is why the arrangements of Joe Arroyo will always be timeless. It has a lot of feel from zouk and compas, from that same motivation that Dominicans had at that time. Johnny Ventura had a lot of feel for that as well, you know, with his personality, which that was able to mend that together. You know, people like Fruco and Joe Arroyo definitely paid attention to that.
Yeah, the other day I was in a Colombian restaurant with my wife, and Joe Arroyo comes on, and it's a salsa that's all in some African language. I don't know which one it was, but I'm clearly hearing like it's not Spanish. And like, what is this? I'm like, oh, this is Joe Arroyo, you know, and he would just constantly be blending that in, you know, and it's dope. It's so awesome. Like I was talking about this yesterday, man. Like you know, there's a lot of activism that's happening, especially on the left side of politics, that is pushing for more diversity, you know, more blending and stuff. And it's like, yo, look back, like look around. There's so much mixes already in art that's incredible, that we take it for granted. We kind of sometimes think like, okay, this is what it is. It's already been happening for a while, and it's beautiful.
Definitely. The diversity, I think, is right now is like code word for restraint. of expression.
Reach.
And I think there's a lot that we can learn from just thinking outside of that box. If there's any box that we need to stay outside of in order to maintain the preservation of creativity, stay outside of that box and just look around. I mean, for God's sakes, you look at, well, my in-laws, they're Peruvian. And the first people who my in-laws interacted with were Dominicans. In fact, my father-in-law, he came with $100 and a guitar and a dream. And the first person that helped him was a Dominican taxi driver. And within 2 days, he got a job in a soup kitchen. It doesn't get any more diversity than that.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, you probably, if you go around and you ask people, you're gonna hear all kinds of stories, you know. And I never want to belittle people who have a real, like, victim story, right? Whether they were victimized, or they were discriminated against. I'm sure it happens all the time. It's happened to me. I've felt at times maybe when somebody looks at me funny, especially when I'm like overseas somewhere that they don't really meet people that sound like me or whatever. I get it. But at the same time, I hate that we're overlooking all the amazing strides we've already made. You know what I'm saying? All the ways that things have already been mixing, and how people genuinely, especially being in New York, you see it. These places are like hubs for that. And my father always told me beautiful stories of knowing people from all over the world that were just cool and they're totally okay and welcomed all kinds of mixing happening.
Definitely. One thing we can learn about New York and digging into its history, which, like you said, ask people about their story. Everyone is willing to tell you their story. And what diversity does is people are no longer willing to listen. It's more a thing of be more diverse, so then we can hide the fact that we just don't want people to connect with each other.
Right, but that's not diversity, right? Like, I know what you mean when you say diversity, the way that it's being used now, the term, right? Because it's like diversity and inclusivity is like a buzzword now for, oh, we're gonna suppress anybody that uses this word, or anybody that does this who isn't of this race. You know, you got to be the right race to say the right word and know the right word, and know you said the wrong word. That's not diversity. Like, true diversity is what happens, you know, like, I don't know. You go to our countries, like, where you go to, like, I've been in Colombia, for example. Colombia has Central America has like a strong African kind of mix there, because, you know, from all the different migration and all the different things that happened. And yeah, there was slave trade and there was all this crazy stuff that happened, but there's a huge mix there. You know, like, you could say that the what we're calling reggaeton now and all the urban movement that's happening now is an offshoot of, like, Panamanian, you know, an island kind of like West Indian and that kind of mix happening there. And they were the first ones that started doing what we're calling reggaeton now over there in Panama. And now we're swimming in that music, and you know, and the Puerto Ricans claiming it, you know, to be theirs. And it's like it's been happening, and it's real. And I like real diversity. I like real diversity. I don't like forced diversity. I look at it like this: like, real diversity looks like a rainbow. It looks like a color, a swatch with a bunch of different colors on it.
You picked me up, my solid ground, heaven on earth, from the lost I am found, eyes to my soul, finding my truth, and all I want is to share it with you.
So I was saying about the diversity thing, basically, which is that diversity that is natural looks like a rainbow. It looks like color swatches with different colors visible. And forced diversity looks like gray. Looks like what happens when you just blend them all. You can't recognize anything. And I think that's what's special about the mixes, right? Is that you see the Colombians with their thing, you see the Venezuelans with their thing, you see the Mexicans over there with their swag. And, you know, and we hang out with each other, we taste little different things, but each one has their own thing.
Definitely. And in fact, I feel like the less people are worried about races, language, and diversity, they tend to allow themselves to be themselves and expose their weaknesses, which we're supposed to expose our weaknesses. That's what makes us better people and make real connections. When you cross the path of someone who's willing to try and crush you, you want to be able to build that thick skin to how to deal with that person, and then realize not all the time that person is going to be your enemy. Sometimes that person that's just trying to crush you might just be lashing out at something that they've never recognized before. But then when you connect with something like music, which I feel is the biggest glue that have brought people together and broken barriers of ignorance, you create relationships that are long lasting. Once that happens, there's really no point in everyone saying yes to each other and agreeing all the time. And there's not a true connection. When people are in dire need, they're more likely to be busy. Yeah. As opposed to if they're measuring what they're doing and actually se entregan al momento, sí. Aceptan hoy para ti, mañana para mí. I've always lived by that. Today for you, tomorrow for me, and God will always take care of each other. We need faith.
El mundo da mucha vuelta, and you never know where you're going to be tomorrow. So you got to treat everyone with the same kindness and love. And no, but you're totally right. You're totally right. And music is that special, Again, like these shows that we've been doing, these Soulfar Sounds, that's why, other than doing the gigs, they're not paying me to say this. I genuinely really enjoy doing those. They're really dope. You should look into them, and people should go check those out. If they know of any concerts happening in their area, they should go to them, because it's like a super unique experience. You're going to have people in the audience that are from all walks of life, literally. And you're going to have people on the stage that are from all walks of life and that do all kinds of different kinds of music. And it's a really cool, genuine way to get to know each other, to share, to feel on a different level, because that's the thing about music, right? It's like gets in through your senses. You might not even be thinking consciously when you're reacting to music. It's just kind of like a visceral, like a human reaction, animalistic kind of reaction. That's awesome. That's like goes beyond what we say, because a lot of the language, man, I think that we're living in a time where language is being twisted and we don't even understand. We're talking past each other. Like somebody says something and then somebody else is interpreting it in a whole different way, and everybody's offended, everybody's angry. I realized that even me, like I'm sitting here for hours watching YouTube videos, and so then, it's showtime and we get to these places and it's like, wow, this is so nice. I'm not hearing somebody telling me some opinion about some crap. It's just genuinely like, oh, your voice is beautiful. Oh my God, that song you wrote was so gorgeous. And I love that. Oh, that's what it should be about.
Definitely. The real life experience of people versus outside of the meta world of this internet that we're still getting used to. We're all still babies to this whole thing. I mean, for God's sakes, there's people who still don't know how to use a telephone properly.
My man. So your parents, you get, mommy, no, dale aquí, hey.
Yeah. And those benefits of the internet are there. There isn't a better time than now to get great information. However, it's up to us to maintain that discipline. What we don't want to be exposed to, kind of leave that in the back burner, because the truth is always going to come out, especially when we see people person to person. I don't know what people's beliefs are when I'm in person. All I want to know is, are you here? And am I here? We're all here for the same experience. Just enjoy life.
Yeah. Some of us are kind of running on autopilot, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I just mean it in a way that it's just the nature of things. Consciousness itself is a very interesting thing, because there are levels of consciousness. There's a level where you could be at where you don't even notice that you're doing something, or that you're saying something, or that you're partaking in a certain kind of habit. And a lot of us aren't too aware of certain things. I've been doing a lot of soul searching lately, bro, and a lot of thinking, and a lot of conversations with my wife, which is one of the things that has actually brought us together. We've grown a lot together. And we're working on it every day. We're trying to get better every time, but it's that trying to get a little bit more conscious as to for example, why we do the things that we do, why we say the things that we say, why we subscribe to the things that we subscribe to, why we identify with certain things and certain modes of being and living and thinking, and why, for example, the world is in the state that it is and the way that we found it when we were born. For example, we're born into this generation in this time, but we're standing on the shoulders of literally thousands and thousands of people and generations before us that led to us being where we are right now. And I feel like there's a huge disconnect from people right now that are not conscious of what it was that happened before they got here, or they cherry pick, right? Like, oh my God, this is what happened so many hundred years ago to this generation in my background. So that's what I'm choosing to identify with. And every day of my life, I'm looking at life through that lens. When it's like, oh yeah, what about all the other stuff that happened that also gave way to your being here today, walking in the footsteps that you're walking in? And I feel like those are the kind of things that kind of put things in perspective for me and my wife a lot. And kind of helps us to kind of maybe gain a certain level of humility regarding certain things. And with certain other things, it gives you kind of like the strength and the courage to walk up and just take an action or say something or do something, you know? And I think that that's an awesome thing to be able to get to.
That what you just said is so substantial. Like, yeah, it's something that'll never go out of style. It isn't meant to be just for today or tomorrow. That's wisdom that's been passed down to us. Those billions of people who've been there before us, who tripped over those rocks or stumbled upon fire, it wasn't on purpose. A lot of it was by default. However, the intent to keep moving forward, trying to become more efficient, not making the same mistakes, yeah, we do need to acknowledge it and not cherry pick what we think is cool. You know, the wheel is cool, but why try to reinvent something that's already been made to perfection? We can still utilize it to keep moving forward.
Right. You know, it's interesting. That's why I know you and I spoke about this. I made a live stream the other day, and I was talking about progress and how we could be fooled by the term progress, because we could just think that it's like everything that's new is progress, but it's like not necessarily. You know, there is such a thing as trying to fix something that ain't broke. It happens all the time. You know, and you know, there's a really cool thing. I was saying to my wife, there's a really cool thing that's been happening with technology that I love, which is that it's kind of like a new trend. Well, it's happening with fashion too. Like things that we love that have become like these kind of vintage kind of equipment or vintage kind of clothing that people used to have to like go online and dig super deep to find, like something that they don't make anymore, for example, you know, that was like cool and that we liked. And you know, big companies, they've been catching wind of like those kind of products, and they're remaking them. They're re-releasing them now with cool updates that are super useful for now, but like with like the aesthetic that we liked from before. And there's really cool products being made now, you know, like, I don't know, like even these cameras or even like the audio equipment that we use, like now audio equipment has like just enough of the vintage analog-y kind of coolness, but with the facility of the modern technology. And that's what we got to do. We got to think like that. Like, what are the things that were good for us, that did benefit us, and that when you outweigh everything, it's still a net positive and a net plus, then let's stick with it. You know what I mean? We don't have to tear everything absolutely down and put ourselves back to the freaking caveman days, just so that we could do something good. Like, no, I think there's good to be had, you know?
It's true. Like there's a school of thought that tape audio at 16-bit, 8-bit sounded so much better at what is it? 30, I think it's 38 and 48 kilohertz.
Yeah.
Whereas the sound of perfection, I wouldn't say it's sound of perfection from my perspective. Yeah. But I do know that the feel of it allows you to create a complete sound and balance. Like what you were saying earlier, you kind of work with those restrictions and get more creative that way. I think that in a sense in production with reel-to-reel tape, I mean, I still own a reel-to-reel because of that. Yeah, there's no replacing that. However, it would be lovely to find a way to create a sound in let's say like a compressor that has IO that you can expand to 16 tracks, where it gives you 16 returns with an actual analog 16 return mixer, where the peak leads are actually gas filled, not digitally filled like they used to. I think that would be so fly. And then at the end, you can actually have a converter that down mixes it as if you were mixing into a reel to reel, yet it's still being transported optically, digitally, multi-track into you, where you can post-produce right off the fly, off of the same mixer.
Wow.
The past meets the present.
Joe, that's fire. That's a great idea. I mean, I think similar things to that exist, you know, but I think right now what's happening is that they're the hybrid is the way, you know. Hybrid is everything now. So it's like you use your computer, you have your computer, because that way you can always edit everything, and you can still use all these companies, and everybody still gets to eat, right? Because all these companies are out there and all this stuff. But then the gear is incorporating, you know, more and more seamlessly. It's pretty awesome now. So you're getting a lot more of that, and it's a great time for audio. Like, honestly, like for like the technical side of shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said the S word. It's just really, really fun. Like, get these. You could get like a fully automated Neve board that's digital all the way through. You could save everything, but it has all the ins and outs. The guts are like the analog one, you know, the actual Neve preamps, you know, so you get that summing too. Like if you lay out your whole mix on that board and then you print, you're getting that nice richness and that you know, whatever the heck electronics is happening inside. So yeah, that stuff is awesome. I love all that, bro. And I think that you're right. I think that we also got used to it, right? Like if you listen to like one of these TV performances that Stevie Wonder did back in the day, in that day and that, what Stevie Wonder, look at that, look at all the merengues, like from those 70s and the 80s and the TV shows.
Yeah.
Everything was connected to some electrical thing. So there's a bunch of buzzing, and it's like horrible, and there's distortion. Everything, you know, every voice is like distorting, but it's the kind of distortion that it's almost pleasing now that you listen back to it, you know, like the piano was playing off of an amp and you could hear the everything. But man, I always tell people, I was like, I don't know why we completely just left that aside. Like we just say that's bad, it's ugly, and now everything is like super sanitized. And it's like I don't know a lot of people in the world of like merengue and all that stuff that like to go back and try to play with some of those idiosyncrasies and some of those like errors and flaws that stuff had before. Because there's a lot of, that's where the mojo is. That's where that, you know, the real vibe is in the saturation and in the way things kind of break up.
Yeah.
In that world. It's dope.
There's something you mentioned there that the noise, the popping, and all the those sounds that come from certain boards, that even despite those sounds happening, for some reason the band still sounded rich, and it didn't stop them from being great performers.
It's true.
There's this thing now called FiDef that is supposed to digitally incorporate those sounds in the background, almost like not necessarily melodically, but for some reason it does manipulate the feel of the listeners hearing the song.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me just, I put some tea on. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. It's ironic because I got my green tea right here.
Nice. I'm gonna be very quick. I'm gonna just put this.
Oh, I'm not cutting this part out either, by the way. I'm gonna leave it right in.
I can hear you actually, so you can keep telling me what you're saying.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, there's something about the feel of the musician as well. I think should never be affected by what's modern and what's old. Well, Rhodes, as a matter of fact, Rhodes has a story that can last forever. And each and every musician that's touched it is never the same after touching the Rhodes. Oh, man. I assume you're drinking green tea.
I'm having black tea.
Oh, black tea. Okay.
Yeah.
So you like the caffeine?
Yeah. I'm you know, I don't know why. I don't really need caffeine, but the thing is with me. So the thing is with me is that I'm a coffee head. Like I love coffee, and I've had to take it down, because I'm getting a lot of acid reflux and all this kind of stuff. And I've noticed that the tea doesn't do that to me. Like I don't get that weird acidity. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off, but it's different. So I've been drinking more tea lately.
Well, this is in no way off the subject. I think you incorporating the tea right now is actually great timing because this correlates with how the ear functions. The mixers and the masters of sound are usually between the age of 42 and 57. And we're talking about people who master records where they have to get at least 20% of what the production is going to produce and project within the next 10 years. So those numbers are huge. And we're talking about like places like Nashville, where I think is like the mecca right now of mixing and mastering. But these guys are well in their 50s and even in their 60s. So we're not affected by the ear is not affected by the saturation of the futuristic sound or the loudness wars. No, it's just about what's balanced correctly for the sound of the song.
Interesting. There is something about what happens to this. There's also, I wonder how that plays into the whole like degrading of our ears and the hearing and stuff like that, because I know that also something that happens after 40, 50s is that the certain high frequencies are inaudible after a certain age. And I wonder if those cats add more highs. I mean, I've seen some guys that mix big pro records like country music and stuff like that, and they add a lot of highs to their records. Because there's something really that we associate to like high fidelity, to like good quality about highs, right? That's why like you hear some like cheap kind of records made that are too bright because they think that sounds expensive or whatever. But it's a certain way to do it, definitely that is pleasing and that it doesn't bother the ears. That's really dope, and I know that it has to do with like exciters and using certain kind of compressors that are brighter and things. And again, like I was telling you, I've been getting into that stuff so much more lately with audio, with mixing and all that stuff, because I realized that the more you know about that, the better producer you become, because you can almost plan for that process so that by the time they get it, they're not being like, damn, bro, could you lower this or could you cut this part out? Or, like you kind of giving them something that's baked in rather than if you plan well, then those guys, the mixers and then the masters, they can really do a better job.
Definitely. Just to finish the contrast with the correlation with the tea.
Yeah.
There is a thing about coffee that when going into your 40s, this acid reflux, naturally, I think that can actually happen at any age. That has to do with the combination of how much rest you're getting, the type of food that you eat, and the timing. It's all about timing. But when you switch over to black tea and green tea, especially if you like the caffeine content, I think it's a great choice you went with black tea. You get the caffeine you need to get that blood flow because of your creative mind. And you don't have to worry about the after effect of how much recovery you need because of the amount of dehydration that you went through for drinking regular coffee.
Exactly.
So, as an engineer, these things do correlate. Look at, matter of fact, you can watch just about any of these guys in their 50 plus years in a studio that they're there for like an hour, 2 hour long sessions, which I've seen a lot on YouTube. They're drinking black tea or green tea.
Yeah, you're right. It's a big one. No, my wife is on top of me about that and staying hydrated and all that, because I realize that's a big thing. It's a dehydration element of it. And also, like the reflux is also that, like the acidity, water helps to bring that down. So don't let's not get started with the health thing, bro. It's just like I'm so lazy with a lot of things and with working out and all that kind of stuff. And You know, good thing I'm home though, because my wife takes care of me. Because if not, when I'm on tour, it's always the same. And I keep saying it, so I'm reaffirming it. But it's just the truth, bro. Every time I go on tour, I get big old fat, and I come back, you know, like wheezing, and you know, it's like it's bad. I gotta stay on it.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right path of constantly finding a way to center yourself, how to balance, you know, and that's something we just need to accept in life. Once that happens, we're not perfectionists at everything else as musicians.
Yeah.
A musician is not meant to be perfect. A virtuoso to performance, that's different. But that's a totally different nature. That you're not going to hear a virtuoso talk about producing a song. It just doesn't work. It's a different mindset.
It's true. It's true.
Now, if there was an instrument that you would choose to perform just by yourself, no words, you're given 45 minutes just to being creative, no computers, just one instrument just playing out loud.
Wow. That's a very good question. You know, it's so hard, bro. That's a hard one. But you know, lately I've been thinking how great it is to play the guitar. Just simply put, just a guitar, because the guitar, you know, is one of those instruments that not only is it giving you melodic content, but it's also giving you strong rhythmic content. The way that it can be strummed, not just, you know, you're not just doing this, but there's also another sound when you do that. You know, the piano is just this, only there. So everything's gonna sound like that. And the guitar it gives you that rhythmic element to it, and it's that portability, you know, and that thing where you just kind of can be anywhere and play it. And I've seen, you know, some of the best, of course, can totally accompany themselves, can play a whole melody and also comp chords and all that stuff. So it's not necessarily limited in that way. You could do whole chords and melodies, which is nice, because I think that's where like horn instruments kind of fall flat, right? Like you can't necessarily give a full chord unless you're playing one of these new electronic saxophones or whatever the heck it is. But so I think that's important, because I feel like chords, you know, give you dimension and can give you another depth. But yeah, I think that's it. I think I would say the guitar right now, because it's just been on my mind. Like every time, yesterday again, the show that we did, I was looking at the artists, and I'm like, oh, that's so awesome that they can do that, and they can just like strum, and all of a sudden now they could do an up-tempo song. I feel like me as a pianist, I can't necessarily do up-tempo songs by myself. Like I try, I do it, and I'm a rhythmic dude. I'm you know, I play merengue and salsa, and so I can do it, but I'm missing everything else. Help me to push that. So, guitar. What were you thinking? What have you answered this question yourself?
Over and over, I keep coming up with different conclusions, but the one thing that definitely remains the same, I would have to say the piano, and no pedal. Just have myself completely uncomfortable, completely awkward, and almost to the point of sounding helpless, that after 5 minutes the creativity kind of runs out. Wow. And that kind of forced me to come up with melodies that go beyond those 5 minutes.
Wow. How long have you been playing?
The keyboard I've been playing since I was 16.
Nice.
Yes, I love the piano. It's and not just the synthesizer. So I think the synthesizer, that's a totally different category in itself, which I do have a deep passion for synthesizers. In fact, that's why I had mentioned compás. You know, it's almost impossible to not relate compás with synthesizers. But on the piano, there's just certain things that if you break a little bit of the structure, you can come with something new. Like, for a perfect example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this school of thought. about 90% of the merengues that have ever existed correlate with the Ionian mode.
Really?
And because of that is why I always feel that merengue is one of the most positive genres that have ever existed. It's almost impossible not to get into a happy mood, wanting to move. You forget about your problems, makes you want to exercise, makes you want to dance, or even imagine yourself doing those things, but it takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. I imagine that the heart rate starts beating at a different, more accelerated rate as soon as you start just hearing it, just listening to it. We were talking about this last night again, me and Kate. We've been talking a lot about merengue music because of the whole Latin Grammy thing that just happened. Last few days. I was nominated. An album that I produced is nominated. Album I produced for Mili Quesada called Resistirá was nominated for Latin Grammys, and we all had our hopes up because we worked so hard on it, and we're all so proud of it. But the award went to Juan Luis Guerra, for his latest live album, Entre Mar y Palmeras, which was an HBO special and everything. It's a whole big deal. Anyway, so we talked about merengue, and it's like, dude, merengue is so sad because merengue, it's weird. People know that it's an important musical genre. People love it. You put it on, they gotta dance to it, especially when they hear hits like Rosario's, Hermano Rosario, or the Puerto Rican stuff, Elvis Crespo, Olga Tañón. People are gonna start dancing right away, and they want to hear it at their parties. But monetarily, in the industry of music, merengue is not a big player anymore. It just isn't. It's not. There was a time in the '90s, late '90s, when Sony, BMG had a whole merengue division, and they had Sergio Vargas, they had this chick Giselle, they had it was Olga, it was like 15 different artists. Powerhouse, and the labels were paying big bucks. When Mili's album, when she did Solo Contigo and all those songs. I think the record right after that was like signed with Sony and one of those Universal, one of those big labels, and it was a budget. You would probably talk to Henry Jimenez about that. It was real. It was a money maker. It was an investment that people used to make, labels used to make in it, and that's just not the case anymore. And it sucks because merengue, I argue, is just as relevant. I mean, Bad Bunny just proved it to everybody, right? By taking Diana Pechao and just turning merengue into this, again, just like one of the top Latin songs of the last year was a freaking mambo, merengue mambo callejero.
Yeah, it's in the heart of everyone, down to their great grandparents. They could try to be more diverse now, but I'm sure you put on La Negra del Swing, they'll be right there with their cousins just dancing along, even though they don't know what the words are, but they feel it for some reason.
No matter where you're from, bro. No matter where you're from. It's amazing.
Well, there's a thing about the sound.
We got 10 minutes according to the timer there.
Yes, sir. And I think these 10 minutes are pretty darn precise. Definitely wrapping things up.
With you, bro, as long as you want. Don't worry.
Yeah, there's a thing about the sound. When I hear a song that's arranged by you, I don't hear it as a song that you made. Let's say if you were to record a song today, I wouldn't hear it as if you recorded it today. There's something about you that your song sounds like if I'm stepping into 5 to 10 years from now. Like you're digging into thoughts almost like you still haven't turned that rock into a diamond, but for some reason you've already envisioned what the diamond was, and you're reaping the benefits of the sound. I think that's something purely beautiful, and I think that's something that you definitely have, that you've inherited from your dad. But not just that, you've nurtured it, which I think is part of what's missing from the 90s. A lot of the youth that had these rocks passed down to them, they didn't refine them into diamonds and nurture them, what their parents handed down to them. which is why I feel it's so important to always honor your parents. Once you honor your parent, you create your own path.
Yeah.
No one can never take that away from you.
I think that you just said something super important. And I talk about this a lot with my wife, with my I have a cousin that's like one of my closest people, and he's a very strong proponent of family, of like traditional families and all that kind of stuff. He's going on his 4th child now that he's about to have. And he's always talking about that. And and I get it. It's like, if you try to think about it in the most simplest way possible, it's this. It's, you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow, once you pass away, once this ends. But you know for a fact that if you have children, that they will carry on, and that they carry your DNA, and that they have some story, some semblance of a story of what you were and what your parents were, and what was the story that brought him or her into being, into this planet. And I think that is insanely valuable. I think you could say whatever you want about how oppressive, traditional like religion has been in the past, or any of those things. But you can't deny that as of now, the only way that we can continue our story is by having children and bringing it out to the next generation, all that kind of stuff. And there's a huge power that has. And I appreciate a lot, like my father's stories and all the things that he's told me, and the way that, he tells me all the time, he's like, you're continuing my story. He's always like, Chris is the better, like an update version of me, and I'm super honored that he says that. I don't agree that I'm better in any way. I feel like definitely I could continue his story best I could. But it's a bit of the, like you said, nurturing what it was that he gave me, and seeing what else I can get out of that. You know what I mean? Not simply just repeating exactly what he did, but like, what am I going to do with that? And I think me, my sister, my brother, we've all tried to do that as best as we can,
Well, to wrap this up, I think this is actually the perfect time to ask about the DX7 reface. What you've done with it is so cool.
I don't have it here. It's somewhere around there. That's my other baby.
Wow.
I love that keyboard.
Yeah, to go from the DX7 with your dad to the DX7 reface, I really think it is a physical representation of what was there then. Now you have access to the DX7 and then some. Everything else that it's opened up to this new world.
Yep. It's crazy. I remember my father telling me that he can make his own sounds inside the DX7. And I couldn't wrap my head around that at that time. I was just a kid. I was like, what? He's like, sí, papi, mira, yo puedo hacer como un sonido de trompeta, si tú quieres. And he was like, o un sonido de órgano, o de piano acústico, mira, un piano acústico. I hear it now, and I'm like, that does not sound like an acoustic piano. But it is a synth, using FM synthesis to create something similar to an acoustic piano. And it was so awesome. Like, my father used to have so much fun with that keyboard.
I gotta say this out loud. I've always looked at your dad with the synthesizer as like the Herbie Hancock to our genre, because I hold merengue so deep. I mean, really deep in my heart. I respect all genres. I love all genres. I mean, I can think, for God's sakes, I even like polka. I enjoy a good country song.
Yeah,
I enjoy the simplicity of resolving, easy resolving. I don't mind the easy resolve. It's better than not resolving and never dropping a beat at all.
I'm with you, bro. Sometimes you gotta just give it. And me and my wife also talk about that. Like, sometimes you over trying to complicate it, bro. Just do what it is. It's asking for it. Just give it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I gotta tell you, it's an honor to finally have this conversation. And for those who get to witness this podcast, I hope it changes their lives as much as no matter what, this has changed me. There's no way to pretend that, okay, yeah, it's a great conversation. No, truth. It's much more than just a conversation. I think this was a bond of minds, of something reaching out to the world, where the world needs to see that no matter what, people are going to connect because they're kind of on the same wavelength of just trying to make the world a better place. That's it.
Brother, I just want to say thank you. And it's the honor has been mine. I didn't know you too well before this, but I got a super awesome vibe from you right away from the beginning, from just seeing your couple of messages online and all that stuff. And I was like, I know I'm gonna have a good conversation with him. So thank you for that. And here it is. Like we just proved that there are definitely benefits to this technology thing. This is always proof that we are headed in a good direction if we use these tools for the right reasons and in the right way. So thank you for the invitation, and let's continue it. Let's do some more.
Mambo Podcast. Si te gusta la vaina, suscríbete a la vaina, dale like a la vaina y comparte la vaina. Mambo.